That cozy tavern scene in every fantasy game and movie? Completely wrong. The medieval world had three distinct types of drinking establishments, and confusing them would be like mistaking a truck stop for a five-star hotel. Each served a different class, offered different services, and attracted entirely different crowds. Understanding these differences reveals the hidden structure of medieval society itself. The alehouse was the lowest rung on the medieval drinking ladder. These were simple, often temporary establishments run from someone's home, typically by women called alewives. No beds, no fancy wine, no entertainment, just locally brewed ale served in a front room or courtyard. The clientele consisted of laborers, local craftsmen, and peasants who couldn't afford anything better. Alehouses appeared and disappeared based on when someone had finished brewing a batch. Taverns occupied the middle ground and served a more respectable crowd. Unlike alehouses, taverns were permanent establishments with proper licenses. They served wine alongside ale, which immediately elevated their status since wine was expensive and associated with the merchant class. Taverns provided food, often hot meals, and became gathering places for guild members and town officials. The atmosphere was more controlled, the company more selective. Inns were not just taverns with beds, they were essential infrastructure for medieval commerce and travel. Inns provided lodging, stabling for horses, secure storage for goods, and meals at fixed times. They catered to merchants, traveling officials, and pilgrims who needed reliable accommodation. Inn locations were strategic, positioned along major trade routes and near city gates. The innkeeper held a position of responsibility and often considerable wealth. Each establishment enforced strict social boundaries. A noble passing through town would never enter an alehouse. A peasant would be unwelcome in a tavern's main room. Inns had different quality rooms for different classes of travelers. These weren't just drinking holes, but physical manifestations of medieval social order. The type of establishment someone frequented immediately communicated their status and profession. The beverages and food varied dramatically between venues. Alehouses served only ale, often still warm from brewing, with perhaps bread or cheese. Taverns offered wine, imported ales, and proper cooked meals like pottage, roasted meats, and pies. Inns provided full-service dining at set meal times, with breakfast, dinner, and supper included in lodging costs. The quality and variety of provisions reflected the establishment's status and clientele's expectations. Entertainment options separated these venues further. Alehouses offered nothing beyond conversation and perhaps dice games. Taverns might host musicians, storytellers, or provide board games like tables and chess. Inns occasionally featured more elaborate entertainment for their wealthier guests. However, the rowdy, brawling tavern scenes from fantasy media rarely occurred in reality. Medieval authorities heavily regulated these establishments and punished disorderly conduct severely. Women's involvement in these establishments reveals surprising aspects of medieval economy. Alewives dominated alehouse operations, as brewing was considered women's work. Taverns and inns, being more formal businesses, were typically male-run, though widows sometimes inherited and operated them. The presence of serving women varied, but the fantasy trope of barmaids in every establishment misrepresents historical reality. Most alehouses had no staff beyond the alewife herself. Medieval authorities closely monitored drinking establishments through licensing, inspections, and regulations. Alehouses required permission from local lords or officials. Taverns needed formal licenses and paid substantial fees. Inns operated under even stricter oversight due to their role in commerce and travel. Prices were often fixed by law, quality standards enforced, and violations punished with fines or closure. This regulatory structure maintained order and generated revenue for authorities. Modern fantasy collapses these three distinct institutions into one generic tavern. Games and movies show elaborate wooden interiors, constant entertainment, and diverse crowds mixing freely. The reality was far more stratified and mundane. Most medieval people drank at simple alehouses or at home. The romantic tavern of fantasy media is a Victorian invention, not a medieval reality. Understanding the true distinctions adds depth and authenticity to both historical understanding and creative world building. The medieval world's drinking establishments were windows into its social structure, economy, and daily life. Alehouses, taverns, and inns each served specific purposes and populations, creating a tiered system that reinforced class boundaries while facilitating commerce and community. Next time a fantasy story presents its tavern scene, consider what type of establishment it truly represents. Subscribe for more deep dives into medieval reality versus fantasy fiction.